Yeah, these are, I'm on the edge of boomer, so.
Right. No, I understand. By the way, we're live. Um. So.
That's fine.
Okay. So, Edge of Boomer, also known as the Letterhack, also known as Matt Strackbein. Is it Bein? Bean?
Fine, yeah.
Bein? Okay. First try. Alright, so, introduce yourself. People may know you, but it's possible they don't. And then it's also possible that someone is, like, it's possible you become, like, ultra famous in, like, 8 years from now, right? You're the most famous person in the world, and people gotta, like, go back and see the origin story, and they will stumble upon this interview, right? So, like, introduce yourself, what's your origin story? Tell us about you. What's going on here?
All that's going to happen probably less than 8 years, too. I'm
no,
right on the road to
7,
being,
maybe?
yeah, most famous person in the world. But anyway, my name's Matt Strackbein. People call me the Letterhack. Do you know what a Letterhack is?
No, I have no idea what that means.
So a Letterhack is somebody that writes a lot of letters, typically to, like, an editor. Like of a newspaper, magazine, or in my case, comic books. So I became well known for writing tons of letters to editors that got published in comic books.
Okay.
And so that I was dubbed the Letter Hack, and then I just used that on Twitter, where I make comics and illustrations to promote left-wing media. Independent left-wing media as best I can, which is kind of a slippery slope these days because there's so many people becoming, like, I don't know, anti-left, for lack of a better word. So
yeah, you got some awkward portraits, I'm sure, that exist now.
Yeah, I want to, like, go back and, like, blur people's faces out or pixelate them or something.
That's really funny. You should, like, the remastered edition, just, like, replace them with another person or airbrush them out Stalin style. Just get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, that's basically it for origin stories. I always like to tell people that I left the corporate world several years ago. I was working for an international corporation that made ski apparel and Olympic ski apparel, and that was, exciting work, but the dynamics of being in that sort of a company were terrible. So I went freelance for about 5 years, and now I have, like, a regular desk job working from home, but it's a people first company called Sticker Giant, and it's, like, right down the street from me, and it's just fantastic. So it affords me a lot of extra time to make my comics, to put on Twitter, but also like this year, I'm self-publishing a comic called Milagro, which I'm going to do a Kickstarter for July 5th.
Would you like to kickstart the Kickstarter on this interview?
Yeah, so
tell us more.
It's going to launch July 5th. We have all kinds of art-oriented reward levels.
So I've got a question. Who is we?
Okay. I use we in the royal sense a lot. But
amazing.
But in this case, I have brought on a couple of collaborators and a couple of consultants. So I have a frequent collaborator named Guillermo Zagara. I call him Mo, and another friend of mine, Ross Radke. So Mo is going to do all the writing, and he's making the scripts, and Ross is doing the interior art. And then I'm coming through and coloring it, doing all the lettering, like the word bubbles and sound effects, all the production, marketing, and most of the funding outside of the crowdfunding through the Kickstarter. So in addition to that, okay, so I should explain the premise first. It's about it's a comic about a wrestler, not a wrestling comic. So it's about a luchador in Mexico who... There's, like, a disaster at the beginning. He kills somebody in the ring and goes into self-exile. That actually happens sometimes in wrestling.
Whoa! And, I thought it was fake.
And, no. Well, it's scripted, but it's, the moves are real. And there's a particular kind of wrestling called shoot style.
Right.
Where they break script. And, like, you'll hit somebody for real.
Okay.
And there's like a little moment where everyone's like, "Oh shit, that was obviously, like, not rehearsed," So this guy goes into self-exile and ends up living on the streets. So that's the premise. Now, as soon as I had this idea, which was like 2004, it started to get bigger than I was able to. I just couldn't handle it. The
You
idea
just
got
couldn't
out of
handle it.
control.
The
Yeah,
idea, like, it just started growing. It had, like,
yeah.
tentacles, maybe, right? It just started collapsing in on your brain, and you just had to
Oh,
release it in some fashion.
it literally started to speak a language that I was not fluent in. Right.
Amazing, amazing.
So the first thing I did was brought on someone to help with translation. It's a friend of mine named Alejandro Rodriguez. He's from Mexico City, where the story takes place. So we're going to get the dialogue just right, the phrasing just right. There's different ways to insult people in Spanish.
I bet.
Like if you know somebody really well, or if it's like a bitter rivalry, or if it's just like throwing a casual insult on the street, you're going to phrase it differently. So I want to make sure all that stuff's right. But we're also going to translate the entire comic book into Spanish. So there'll be
Okay.
two versions. At least digitally, there'll be two versions. The other thing I needed a consultant for was the actual wrestling and fight moves, because I don't know how to wrestle and I
Right.
don't fight. I mean, I used to fight, but it was
I mean,
schoolyard
if you
stuff.
want, if you want to organize some sort of fight, because I heard that there's like YouTubers that are fighting people now. I am willing to fight you so that you can
Yeah.
learn. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh, you and I.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna beat your ass. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that pre-coffee or after we've had coffee?
Coffee and garlic. Thank you very much.
Oh, I constantly have garlic flowing through my veins.
Of course. There you go.
But I think all violence is good if it takes place inside of a comic book.
I agree. I think all violence, as well as violins for that matter, should take place in comic books.
Yeah, yeah. But I just don't. I'm not going to make a comic book about wrestling and fake it the same way I wouldn't fake Espanol. And
Right?
so we brought on Raul Ramirez, who's the founder of the Catch Wrestling Alliance. Catch wrestling is a particular kind of wrestling. There's more than one kind, but there are some that we settled on because wrestling moves in the ring are one thing when you have a referee and regulations, but outside of the ring, where most of our fights take place, you can modify the moves for brutality. And so I wanted somebody to tell us how to do that
Okay.
accurately. And so this way people can relate to the comic book, or you can just enjoy it as a comic book. But that's why I say we.
It's
'Cause I
like
had to
having
bring
like
other-
the sci-fi movie where they have like that nerd who explains all the physics equations just because there's that person in the audience who's gonna love that shit. But most people are like, okay.
Yeah, like when it comes to sci-fi, I used to read a lot of Ray Bradbury, and he would say things like, "Oh, the rocket took off." Okay, I guess rockets take off, fine. But then you read like Frank Herbert, the guy who wrote Dune, and he's like explaining how the rocket works.
Sure.
And so there's different levels, and I wanted to be more like the Frank Herbert level, which I can't do without consultants. So I brought on expert artist who's very professional and very good, and I brought on a writer who's known for extensive levels of research, and so it's going to be as authentic as possible.
All right.
I don't want to. Yeah.
That's amazing. This actually sounds fun. I've always been interested in comics. I used to draw on my homework in middle school, right? But obviously I'm not as good as you are. So I mean, I like the idea of creating like a whole universe and having like, like, is there any like a set like kind of how long the length of the series will be, or is it just as long as whatever?
Yeah. So my favorite comic books are a single story. Like, don't leave me hanging.
Okay.
Right? Leave me wanting more without leaving me in the lurch, so to
Sure.
speak. So this is 3 chapters told over 70 pages, and like we as we're making this first installment, we're thinking, oh my god, we could do this, we could have a spin-off, we could really create like an entire universe around this one character. But we're focused on telling a single story in this book. So it's 70 pages, full color, There's plenty of opportunity for more, but that depends largely on how well we do this July.
All right. So what happens, like, just like from a production standpoint, what happens if like you need that 71st page? Like, is that a problem? Like how do you know that you're going to be on 70 and not 71 or 69 pages, for example?
Oh, like, you mean if we get to the point where, like, we just need one extra page?
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing, and this is, if I have an expertise in comics, it's this. Because I was an art director for comics for, like, 6 years.
Okay.
And so I know how to handle just about any situation that could arise. And so the first thing I do is I take any concept, no matter how epic it might be, and boil it down to one page.
Okay.
If you can tell, I don't care if it's a novel or a comic book, if you can tell your epic masterpiece in a single page, then you know what the essence of the story should be. And those are the most important notes to hit, right? Everything else is just for fun, filler, decoration, that kind of stuff, right?
Sure. So, like, okay. Okay, no, like, I'm not trying to cut you off, but
that's okay.
So, like, again, I've never made a comic book, but I have read comic books, right? So, like, you know, you said it's going to be like full color and everything. Like, how much does that cost? You know, like, because that, like, comics seem pretty colorful, right? Most comic books I've read are in black and white. Like, how much does that cost? Is that, like, significantly more expensive?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is why. First of all, like, I love black and white comics. I read tons of them, right? I think they're fantastic. But I want to make a full color comic.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I contribute most to comics is coloring. And so I was like, well, we definitely have to color it. It's probably 50 to 75% more expensive to do color.
Okay. So it's, like, pretty significant.
Yeah, it's a big deal, but, you know, as long as you, like, I've also managed the business side of things, and I was self-employed for like 5 or 6 years doing like a freelance hustle, so I really know how to dial in the expenses ahead of time. So I spent more time talking to my collaborators about how we were going to make the book instead of what the book was about.
Okay.
Because it was like for tax purposes, we need it funded and produced in the exact same year. So we're not going to do anything without agreeing that that's possible. And that's why I started the conversation basically January 1st of this year, because I already knew how much pre-planning, pre-launch, launch, and final production was required. That's all kind of the boring stuff, but that allows you to have fun in the moment when you get
the framework, like, ready, and then, like, once that's built and constructed, you can just do whatever the hell you want within it, and, like, you know it's going to be fine. You don't have to worry about, like, oh, is this going to fuck up my plan or that kind of shit, right? I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's
and that's the other way you avoid having to add pages, because we start everything out in like a thumbnail stage where, like, the artist will draw each page on a single page, just real scratchy, super small thumbnails.
Sure.
And we'll make changes there so that the further along the process we go, the fewer changes there are going to be.
Okay.
And so there's almost no chance after you get to a point, that what I call point of no return. Of course, you can always go back and refine stuff if you want to, but we get to a point of no return where it's like we're just not making any more changes to this.
And it's just like, you know, completing the actual project from that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you take your sketch and make it an actual drawing, and then I get the drawing and I clean it up and put all the colors on it and all the lettering. And if we get to the last page and decide we like something to be different on the very first page, fine. If there's time for that, go ahead and fix it. But if you nitpick along the way, you'll get bogged down and it'll never get done. I've seen too many guys where, like, I have a friend who's making comics, and I always say, what if you had a publisher come along and say, complete the book next month and we'll give you worldwide distribution. Can you do it? And he says, no. It's going to take longer to finish. And I was like, well, then it may never see the light of day. Like, I'm glad you have that level of dedication, but my comics get out into the world. So, for example, when I put something on Twitter, I probably literally just finished it.
Right.
So I get done with it, and then it sees sunlight within a few minutes. That's just how I like to do it. And then that leaves your drawing board free for the next project.
All right. Yeah, okay, let's get back into your Twitter a little bit. So, you post a lot of drawings. I remember when you first did a drawing of me. That was super cool with Max the dog just leaping over whatever was going on there. That was pretty cool. Like, what, like, is your process for, like, drawing random podcasters? Like, what do you, like, how do you decide who's, like, is going to be drawn? How do you decide what you're going to draw them in? I noticed you do a lot of Majority Report stuff, and you take, like, some of their stories and try to make them in, like, comic form. Like, what is the thought and inspiration process behind that?
So, first of all, I have to watch it, right?
Sure.
And I don't, and it's usually stuff I watch on a regular basis. Like, there's some things I watch faithfully when it's on live, and there's other things that I have to circle back and catch up on at night or the next day. But, Majority Report is easy because there's a group of people on there, and the dynamics are built in already.
Sure.
So they're sitting. You can't have 3 or 4 people on a podcast without somebody saying something funny, right? And so
Trust me, I just want to intervene. It is very possible. It is.
Okay.
I have seen many podcasts. It's so possible. But go on.
But also because you interact with your chat room. So that's sort of the same thing. There are built-in dynamics there. It's essentially a group dynamic.
Sure.
But I see what you're saying. So what I like to do is promote people at different times. I like to make sure that I'm promoting people that, because like I was saying, you know, in a couple of months you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I never promoted that guy, right? Because now potentially people are watching this new message, which I just don't agree with, or I don't think jives with the left.
Do you have anyone you want to call out, or is that too much drama for you?
Definitely Glenn Greenwald.
Amazing.
I had lots of respect for him, and now he's just like, the epitome of protagonist syndrome. And I mean, here I am talking about myself, but this isn't something.
Oh, this is your interview, buddy.
Yeah, but and also I'm talking about how I promote other people who are more deserving. That's just like my
Yeah, I mean, I don't like him either, so you're good.
Well, but if I'm popular on Twitter, then other people are potentially popular that I'm promoting, and that's the goal. It's like a win-win.
Sure.
But, guys like him are clear, to me, they're clearly just profiting from being like on the anti-left. And they're not, like, people would say, oh, you went right-wing, and I'm like, I don't. They might be platforming people on the right, but they aren't necessarily right-wing or conservative, at least not by definition. And so I think that they're just making bank off being in the middle, so being anti-left. And
yeah, like they just like will parrot these like look at the Antifa BLM memes, like that stupid shit. They'll like draw the like they'll like, oh, any right-wing disaster like January 6th, that's no big deal. But, like, if, a Democrat says something mean on the House floor, it's the hugest deal in the world. Like, that kind of stuff. Just, like, blowing certain things out of proportion and then, like, keeping other things, like, under proportion. Like, and I've noticed this with the January 6th thing. It's like, that's just, like, to a lot of people, it's just gone. Never happened. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, January what? Like, it's New Year's, bro. Woo, right? And that's bizarre to me. Yet you've got the same people like Glenn Greenwald who will go like day after day talking about SJWs and how like, woke culture is destroying America. And it's like, bro, what the fuck are you on about? Like,
yeah. And it's not, see, now I'll get into an area that I don't normally get into, but people say they're being nuanced, and I think that they're being selective. And making fun of AOC for being scared on January 6th is not funny. But then getting mad when people make fun of you for anything, it's like, fair's fair, right?
Yeah, if you're gonna go on a shitty fucking tour talking about how AOC pretended to be scared or something, and then you're gonna cry when someone criticizes, like, I got blocked by Glenn Greenwald, right? So it's like, how the fuck are you gonna make fun of AOC for being scared when she almost got assassinated? Yet you're gonna block people like me for asking me asking why you're a poo poo head. You know what I mean? Like that, I think that's like one of the things that I was. But anyway, like it's just like I don't know these people. I think the term you use, selective, is important because it really when you've got 2 million followers, right? And you only talk about, there's the editorial decisions that people don't understand or people don't if you're reading Twitter and you're not a Twitter user, or if you're like watching podcasts but you don't make a podcast, there's these editorial decisions. So it's like, okay, what stories are they talking about, right? Like what parts of the stories are they talking about? And most people they don't understand that that's like a very significant portion of the message that's being displayed, right? So when I cover a story, because I'm better than Glenn Greenwald, of course, right? I'll try to cover there you go, endorsed live on stream. But I'll try to cover all sides, as many sides as I can of a story, even if things aren't necessarily great for my propagandistic purposes, right? Because I try to get everything out there that I understand. And try to build in arguments against them, even if it's just as if you think this, you're an idiot. I'm not going to dwell on an argument that I think is just stupid. But people like Glenn Greenwald, right, and some other certain actors that are trying to put themselves in that position. I'm not going to name names unless you want to, but they try to only focus on things that are helpful to the right, or not necessarily against the left, but doesn't put the left in a great position. It's really interesting. Again, you've got certain individuals, for example, when it comes to January 6th, saying that no one was killed because bullets that were fired wouldn't missed or something, and that's the argument that there's no intent, so therefore no one and it's that to me is bizarre, and it takes away from the fact that thousands of people literally tried to overthrow democracy. To me, that's the most important aspect of January 6th, right? Is that the cops let them in and they tried to overthrow democracy. I don't give a shit about squabbling what the technical definitions of who got killed and did they die or were they murdered? Was it I don't give a shit about that. What I give a shit about is the cops opening up the doors for a bunch of pro-Trump losers. That's what I give a shit about, right? And so you see people that are trying to they claim that they're getting into nuance, oh, I'm just trying to figure out the nuance of this situation and get a microscope under the situation. But it's okay, well, have you thought about that whole conversation you're having doesn't matter? Have you thought about the fact that just doesn't matter at all, right? So and that's the problem with this, and you say it again, it's anti-left, because I don't think Glenn Greenwald's necessarily a right-winger. I think he's more a libertarian, he just doesn't really give a fuck about anyone else but himself kind of person, right? But he knows that you can make a very quick buck just shitting on people like AOC. If you make a video about AOC, or he did this tour about how lesbians are being destroyed by trans people. You just take these certain topics and it's you just present them in a certain way, and then you've got the plausible deny. Hey, I said in my video that I like trans people. So it doesn't matter if my video is 30 minutes of promoting right-wing conspiracy theories that make it so that trans people are villains. I said at the beginning I like trans people. Hey, one of my friends is trans. So therefore, when I spend 30 minutes talking about not how trans people have just been, killed and executed and murdered over the course of thousands of years, and maybe that's why that there's a rise in trans people because they're more comfortable coming out. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about how the lesbians are being destroyed, right? So again, it's very, I appreciate the term selective. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, and I think it's odd to go after people for having an opinion about something like January 6th, trying to call out the average reader, viewer, or Twitter user for saying people died and saying no, not really. It's just write your article, let the article speak for itself. But if you want to go on Twitter after that and start calling people out, and I guess there's some back and forth on Twitter when people try to call you out for things you said in your article, but just it gets odd to me. It's one of the insurrectionists died themselves. Remember that woman was shot, right?
Yeah.
They got themselves killed. They should be held accountable for that. Everybody should be held accountable for anything that was for any fatality on that day. It just makes me upset when it's somebody that I think is friendly, they're a nice guy, they've done everything in a manner that seems respectful, with dignity, and then all of a sudden it's this one opinion is just totally from like off camera. Like, where did that come from?
That's like I'm waiting for I'm waiting for myself to have that opinion. Like where it's like my audience is like, what are you doing? It's gonna happen at some point.
Like you say, starting right now in the middle of this segment, you hate art and comics.
Yeah, no, fuck art. All my homies hate art. I'm gonna buy the Mona Lisa and burn it live on stream like that.
No, I don't see you doing that. Like, you're honest the whole time. You'll disagree with people in real time.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that's important because then it's like there's no curtain to drop later. It's you're not hiding behind anything. So
I think like if we can psychoanalyze podcasters, because I'm a podcaster and I love to like talk about myself and how I'm better than other podcasters, because obviously that's the case. But I think a lot of podcasters do, like you say, get this like main character syndrome kind of a thing, where it's like they will like, let's say like there's they will have like these people that they respect and look up to that have like these intellectual careers or other podcasters, and they try to like they always try to like weigh in on every topic, and they always try to have their take be like a hot take so that they get those retweets, because if you've got a take that's as the same as everyone else's, you're not going to get the retweets. Right, you're not gonna you're not gonna build your career based on like if you just like write Medicare for all now, like you might get like a couple retweets, but you're not gonna get as many if you say actually Medicare for all is a bad idea and here's why. Like I don't know, that was going on yesterday on Twitter. Some dumb bitch was like Medicare for all is right wing actually, and it's like what? Right, so it's like. And it's if you have these bizarre opinions, you get the more screen time, you get more people talking about you, and it incentivizes people to have those really bizarre opinions, right? And it incentivizes people to like, take something, and maybe they'll have like the right opinion, but they, again, like you said, selectively focus on these things that aren't necessarily the most important because no one else is focusing on them. And I think a lot of people just want to be like that, like, that person that's got like the hot takes on everything, and they just want to grow their career based off of that. And to me personally, I'm not interested in that. I'm just doing my show because I like to blog. I would like to have a career, but like I don't give a shit. I mean, like I've successfully avoided having a career for my entire life. I'm not going to start now, right? But a lot of people, I want to write books. I want to be an author. And if I need to be an author and I need to pay the bills writing books, I need to find a way to promote my books by, making these bizarre hot takes so that people say, buy my book. And then I can go on a podcast and tell people to buy my book. And then, it's like I think capitalism is really just the problem here. And like, there's a lot of podcasters that aren't, like, they will say that they're anti-capitalist and they'll say that capitalism is the problem, but in their everyday waking life, they participate in capitalism just like all the other capitalists. And, like, for me, I think that if you are an anti-capitalist, I'm not necessarily saying you have to be, like, the hardcore vegan who, like, rides bikes everywhere and, like, recycles their own, like, sewage waste in the front lawn or whatever. Right, what I'm saying is you should try your best with the tools that you have and the life that you live to be anti-capitalist in your everyday life. Like, so, for example, one of the reasons why I don't eat meat is because I don't appreciate the meat industry and how it affects the world, right? And, also, I don't want to die, right? And so it's also, and that goes into, like, how I do my podcast, right? I'm not going to, like, go out there and try to have bizarre hot takes for the sake of getting clicks. I could, and maybe, there's an argument that I should do that, right? In some instances, if I do have, like, a take that I truly believe that, like, not many people have, like, maybe I should try to market that more, right? But it's like at the end of the day, I'm just like here to blog, like I'm not here to try to get rich. If that happens, I mean, I'll take it, right? But
well, I think self-promotion is necessary. It feels shameless and gimmicky a lot. It kind of is, but you have to limit the number of gimmicks you're willing to use, right? Like a particular podcaster with uniquely like upsetting opinion all of a sudden is it may be a sign that they weren't unique enough in the first place that they'd have to resort to something like that. Like maybe you're just like every other podcaster, and so you're resorting to tactics that are trying to that try to make you look unique. And the sad fact is maybe you weren't unique. Okay, well, just rely on what you do well and hope that it's good enough. And if it isn't, do something else. I don't know. Shave a mohawk into your head or something like that. I guarantee people are going to notice that. It might not get the same clicks as making fun of a politician for whatever reason, but oh well. So, I do this a lot where it's like I have to promote things all the time, and I hate it. And like I know you and I have even had discussions in the chat about promoting yourself, and you're like, I would never do that. And I'm like, you kind of have to.
Yeah, no, I can't do it. I won't. I refuse.
Well, but see, at the same time, like, meanwhile, you are becoming more popular all the time, and you get exposure just by doing what you do. So
Sure.
there's some truth to your decision. But on the other hand, call into the majority report. I guarantee they're going to give you the open invite to call back, and they have, right? So that's kind of a thing too.
You should call in again.
This is why, I know that whole call-in process is a hassle. But
now this is why, I want other people to call in for me because I hate,
Yeah, I know.
I hate that. It's like I'm going to listen with my headphones.
But so that's why I sort of promote myself secondarily by promoting other people.
Yeah, like by promoting other people, you are by sheer nature of doing so promoting your own artwork because you're drawing other people, and that's like a really good kind of like middle ground on that. Is like, you like these people and they're doing the wacky comics, but I drew the wacky comics. Follow me.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because like I was on social media for a few years, or on Twitter anyway, and I got off because I was like, this is a hell site. I have no purpose here. I'm joining in Discord more than anything else because that's really all there is. So I got off, and it was something like 9 or 10 months later. I was like, you know what? I'll get back on, but I'll do it using comics to promote. This was like 2016. I discovered all these left-wing podcasters, right?
Sure.
So by the time I got back on, and between 2018 and 19, I decided I would make comics of these people as a way to promote them. And then if for some reason I get a lot of followers from that, it'll be because of that. And so I'll have a purpose. And so it's only now that I'm trying to build off any audience I have personally by making Milagro, and that promotes everyone else who's involved. So once again, I can't promote myself without promoting other people or a product of some sort that I think brings entertainment to people. So, and there's actually a lot of progressive themes in, like, there's narration in the comic book over this one scene that, I don't want to spoil it. The scene has nothing to do with progressive values, but the narration over top of it is like bordering on communist values.
Sure.
And so I always promote juxtaposition, right? Creating harmony with two separate elements to convey a single idea. So in this case, words and pictures. That's what comic books are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get really creative in what words you decide to put over what pictures to get people thinking about something that isn't literally on the page.
Exactly, for sure. And you can also have it's one of those things where not every single reader is going to get it, right? Yeah. But there's like a certain percentage of them that will, and that it, could be something that sticks with them, and then they think about it later, or like maybe they read it a second time. And like now that they know the whole story, like that makes a little bit more sense in context, and they can focus more on the individual things rather than the full narrative, right? And so for sure, I noticed that a lot in especially when I watch any television show or read any book for the second time, you notice like more individual kind of parts more because you're not focusing as much on the total story because you already know what happens.
Yeah, exactly. I want to ask you something though, going back to
the interviewer gets interviewed, part 1. All right.
I just wonder what your opinion is about this, because I designed Olympic ski apparel for female athletes. I did for male and female athletes, but outside of the Olympics, like in the regular season, I designed for individually female athletes, and one of them was Lindsey Vonn. Have you ever heard of her?
Nope.
She's the most decorated skier in the world, not just in the female skiing world, but men and women. And so I always wonder, like, when people are up in arms about trans women getting into quote-unquote female sports or sports leagues or whatever, isn't that really just the same argument as men are better than women at all sports?
Yeah, it really boils down to that. Yeah, I mean, it boils down to a fundamental misunderstanding of, like, physics, biology, like what even the sport is, right? Like, it's just like it's just bigotry on all forms. Like, these people have absolutely no clue about how things can be fair. Because if you think, like, again, I use the analogy of, like, having someone who's, like, 7 feet tall versus someone who's 4 feet tall playing basketball. Like, they could both be men, and they can both be drastically differently equipped for the situation, but they're both men, technically, so therefore it's fair all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, I've seen some really uncoordinated 7 foot tall basketball players, too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, like, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you want things to be as fair as possible, you're not going to go on arbitrary characteristics. It's the same shit as in, like, the 1940s and 50s when they segregated leagues based on race. It's the same thing. Oh, black people have more testosterone, therefore they're better at sports. Okay, maybe, maybe not. How do you know that? You're not testing, like, you're just segregating them because you're a racist. You know what I mean? Right? So it's like... Yeah, for sure. I think it's stupid. And then, of course, there's sports where, again, like, it really, like, I don't know much about skiing. I'm going to be honest, but I don't know how, like, your physical form weighs into the skiing. I feel like it's just more so, like, your agility and your flexibility or your, like, you know, reaction time. To me, that's what it seems more of. But I don't know. But I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it. You know what I mean?
Well, you know how skis have an edge?
Sure.
Like, the skis literally have an edge. When you turn, you're holding the edge. And so that's what they call it. If you can hold your edge, you'll be the best skier because, let's say you're going really fast, or it's really steep, or the conditions are more like ice than snow, or it's a sharp turn. If you can hold your edge, you'll win. So it's really about holding on in the most precarious moments. Like, going back to Lindsey Vonn, she has, I forget the mountain, she has the world record of any man or woman on this one mountain. And she's had it for a while. And that's in the regular season. Now, when it comes to the Olympics, the Olympic Committee designates that mountain men only because it's too dangerous for women. And she's like, well, I should be competing with the men because none of them have the record on that mountain.
Yeah, see, that's so bizarre to me.
See?
That's
Bullshit, right?
bizarre. Yeah, that's super strange.
So if you want to complain about trans people getting into certain sports, you really need to embrace that entire argument in general. Like, should they be gender specific? I mean, I'm not here to say yes or no. But, like, why would you just pick, and this is what I'm saying, they're being really selective about the argument that they want to pick up and run with instead of looking at the entire thing. Like, have you written a book on sports and gender or not?
Like, and a lot of these people, like, if you ask them, like, any question about biology or any question about the sport, they're going to say, I don't know. Or they're going to try to pretend like they know and just spew misinformation that someone told them in a podcast. Like, oh, I heard Ben Shapiro say this, so therefore it must be true. Right? And it's like, most of these people will never do the research. They're just dumb and they're trying to make a quick buck off of hopping on a trend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like controversy du jour, really. Mm-hmm. It's like, what's going on today that I can get up in arms of? Like, everyone's pissed off at Joe Manchin. Does anyone know who Paula Jean Swearengin is? You know?
Like, I know, yeah. She's the one who ran against him and then ran against Capito or whatever the fuck her name is and lost both times.
People should have been pushing for her this whole time. Everyone should have been like, Manchin's the problem. We need to promote her. I don't care if you live in West Virginia or not, you know? But anyway, but that's I've never drawn a picture of her, actually. That's bad.
She, I mean, I don't want to, like, shit on her, but she had this little anti-AOC arc recently that was like...
Yeah, well, see, that might have been the same thing, right? That might have been, like, her slipping into a gimmicky kind of self-promotion or the controversy du jour. I know what you mean, yeah. And I think anyone's guilty of that.
I don't want to like act like I'm a genius, right? But I think the force the vote like thing actually was like a lot in retrospect. Now that it's been 6 months, like that's like a huge fractioning point that I didn't like realize would be as big. I thought it was just like something pretty stupid at the time and that it would go away. But I mean, like you see all these, and they're like even manipulating people like Paula Jean Swearingen into being like dumbass motherfuckers and posting like anti-AOC stuff and AOC should be helping me and only me because we did a documentary a couple years ago, and that's great. I'm glad you had that documentary. It sucks that you lost, right? But it's like, you know, like you have to like, you know, like the idea that someone who's a left winger and someone who's like trying to take the same lane as AOC in actual electoral politics, the idea that she would think that going against AOC is somehow profitable to me, I think it just proves that whole like anti-left thing that's taken place over the last 6 months, I think it's been coordinated. I think it's been well funded. I think the people that were targeted because they have like audiences and because they're also just personally stupid and selfish. And again, this boils down to capitalism. Like Jimmy Dore is not an anti-capitalist, and he started this whole giant fucking capitalistic like, you know, like led kind of like force the vote bullshit that turned like this, like, and this could just be in online left media spaces. But when you look at offline left spaces, most people that are offline and somewhat left wing are more on the liberal side, right? And so like, you know, there's not that many people that like, you know, are left wing and aren't actively, you know, engaged in, say, social media or online activism or activism, you know, in general, right? There's, like, most of those people are apolitical. They don't know, like, what's going on, or they're, like, they're liberal. Maybe they'll, like, oh, yeah, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they're kind of cool, right? You know? And so it's, like, but, like, there's this brand that's, like, online 24/7, and they get, like, stuck in this hyperbolic time chamber where it's, like, you know, they feel like they've evolved for, like, 70 years, and they realize that the real answer is all politicians are corrupt and evil, and therefore let's post on Twitter all day and do nothing else. You know what I mean? Right? And it's, like, and, like, I don't know, it's bizarre to me. It's bizarre to me. And I feel like it's, like, you know, like, yeah, like you said, people should have been pulling for Paula Jean Swearingen the whole time, right? But it's also like most of the people that now recognize that Joe Manchin's the problem didn't know who Joe Manchin was 8 months ago, and that's a problem, right? And so like you should, like, the left, like whatever that means, the left should have been talking about how Joe Manchin is going to be a huge problem regardless of what happens the entirety of 2020, right? And like there are people that did. Right, there are people that said no matter if Bernie or Biden wins the primary, the real thing is going to be the Senate, right? There are people that did do that. But, like, you know, there's a lot of shouldas. And, like, it's also, like, goes back to the thing. It's, like, we do not have any, like the Bernie Sanders campaign was the best chance of having any unified, coordinated left-wing movement, right? And I really do feel like the force to vote, like, anti-left online super commie bullshit. Like, I feel like that the specific purpose of that was to break up Bernie 2020 from ever happening again. That's what I feel like the ultimate goal of that was, right? Because they knew that Bernie 2020 was mostly online activism, right? And then they all have, like, people all have their own personal friend networks, right? So it's like, for example, I worked with the Bernie campaign, and I got my friends, and, like, I'll try to get them to vote for Bernie. I got my family, I'll try to get them to vote for Bernie, right? So, like, each person that worked with or on or voted for Bernie represents, like, 5, 10, maybe 15 different people in their friend groups, in their families, right? And so, like, if you can target those people, then you're going to corrupt their entire networks. You know what I mean? Right. And so, like, that's what I feel like the goal of that was. Like, you attack a podcaster, give them a bunch of money to do a bunch of stupid shit, then all their fans are going to do a bunch of stupid shit, and then the friends of all their fans are going to be like, oh, I guess AOC is bad because my friend who's into politics told me so, and hey, that's my friend who's into politics, I trust them because I don't feel like doing the work myself. And it just goes into that kind of, like, it, you know, top-down kind of manipulation of how people behave.
Yeah, really, it's really, yeah, it's deceiving, and that's one of the worst, because when people say, oh, CNN's fake news, okay, yeah, sometimes they act a little, not a little. I'm not the proper critic of cable news because I gave it up like almost 10 years ago. But yeah, I see what you mean, but it's not literally fake news stories. Like, they could be reporting on something legitimately, but their angle is more editorial, right? And so you just don't agree with them. See, things are either in black and white. Things are either evidence-based or opinion-based. And those two things rarely work together. Like, if at somebody's job they have evidence-based solutions for how to make things better as far as their process goes, then during the process you can't have an opinion about what to do. It needs to be based on that evidence of success or failure. Mm-hmm. So, that's how I tend to look at things, and how I wish people looked at things a little bit more. And just, hey, if you're watching CNN, from show to show or segment to segment, that could be more evidence-based or more opinion-based. And you just have to be aware of that, right? And then you'll feel a lot less like people are trying to trick you or dupe you, right?
That's the other thing is that, like, not to interrupt you, but like a lot of people don't have that like self-awareness, and they will just take things at face value, right? And so a lot of people think, oh, mainstream media is bad. Anyone who's not mainstream media must be good because they're not mainstream media, right? And so like they start like thinking in like, if you listen to a podcast all the time, you will start using like their terminology, you will start like using their phraseology, you will start using their arguments in your everyday life. And then like, like that's, one of the things, like if you don't have someone that challenges you and says like, what do you mean by that? Well, okay, well, if I say, like, let's say I listen to a podcaster and they say AOC is evil because she called Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear or whatever, and I'm talking to someone who actually knows what they're talking about, and I say, well, yeah, Mama Bear. And then they say, okay, well, that was once in front of a bunch of, like, elderly Democrats, and also, like, she's done the exact opposite of that many times. And then you realize, oh, shit, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have the necessary information. Like, that's the ideal scenario. Sometimes people just go, like, nope, she said Mama Bear, and walk away, right? But you need to, like, my thing is, like, you need to, like, try to plant media criticism in people's brains and to be always skeptical of everything, right? So, like, when I do stories, I want to, like, read the text and say, like, this is what I disagree with. The framing here, especially with police narratives, right? Like, whenever, like, a media article says police said or authority said, disregard it. Doesn't matter. Pretend, like, that are not only should you pretend like that's wrong, but you should just pretend that doesn't exist as far as, like, looking for evidence, because what that is poisoning the well. You don't need to be concerned with what the police have said because they're always going to lie to you, right? So it's like, but people don't have that skepticism. You know what I mean? People just go like, oh, podcaster said it, must be kind of true, or like they don't look into it, they don't verify facts, they don't like, and they'll start just thinking in these terms that other people have kind of like planted in their brains. You know what I mean?
So with the exception of Sam Cedar, I think all of the podcasters and independent lefties I watch and listen to are younger than me. I think you personally may be the youngest, but here's why. Because tell me if this isn't true. When I was your age, I just wanted people my age to listen to me. Right? I'm 46. And so when I was 24, 25, I was like, man, I have like a fresh perspective, and in all likelihood, the older person is set in their ways. Or there's more potential to be set in your ways. Mm-hmm. And so I wish they were more open to what I was saying, whether they agreed with it or not, just to sort of free them up from being set in their ways.
Just so that they know that there's that other perspective. Like, because a lot of people just don't know that there's another perspective that exists. They've never heard it before.
And so where I don't agree with that is like in things like music and TV and movies. Like, there's a lot of things that just aren't meant for my demographic. Sorry. I'm set in my ways. I listen to the same music I listened to when I was in high school. Sorry. But when it comes to things like, your opinions on democracy, current affairs, American politics, international politics, whatever it may be, I need to hear something that is totally outside of what I'm currently thinking to inform the way I think going forward. Mm-hmm. Because there is no way that it's just completely untrue that I have it figured out in a manner that's going to serve everyone equally. And so I don't want this selfish opinion on what I think is right or wrong. And so I listen to younger people. And what's funny is like when I was, before I was like 30, I would look at my parents and be like, I just assumed they should have it figured out at their age. And then when I got to be their age, I was like, oh man, they were like little kids. They don't have anything figured out. They're making it up as they go, just like anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't really change. I've learned a lot. I've been a homeowner for several years. I've learned a lot about that, about finances. I was self-employed. I learned a lot about that. But I won't hold it against people who don't have that knowledge. I'll try and impart that knowledge on them. Right? But that's a two-way street. Like, I've forgotten a lot of stuff that I believed in or knew about when I was younger, just because I've been bogged down with all these technical details as I get older and become like more, I don't know the correct term, but like a functioning adult in society.
Sure.
Like what's expected of me, right? As someone who has a loan or pays bills or whatever, the boring stuff. And so I, on the one hand, live vicariously through people like yourself, but on the other hand, I'm totally receptive to anything that you're going to say. I might not always agree with it. I actually do agree with you on a regular basis. That's why I watch
What
the
do you
show
disagree with?
I don't even know.
All right, do you want to abolish fast food, yes or no?
Well, Burger King makes a plant-based burger. But yeah, I mean, the industry in a whole is bad. You don't need it.
There you go.
You don't need that.
What about abolishing roads? All cars and roads gone.
Yeah, I could get by. Sure.
All right.
Easily. I love to take road trips, but outside of that, I barely use my car. I put like $20 in gas in it every couple of months.
And you just have a car, and you have to pay for it all the time, and it's a bunch of upkeep, you know, for no reason. Exactly. Meanwhile, I don't have a car. I never have to think about it. Never.
Right.
I don't have to waste my brain power on, oh my God, I have to pay insurance tomorrow. Oh my God, I have a leaky tire. I don't like the tires.
That's what people should do is this is the quickest way. Like, I was a manager for a long time. In just about every job I had, I became a manager at some point. So I'm always thinking about how to make things more efficient. The first thing you do is you identify something that you may or may not need. Now imagine it just suddenly vanished. What is the one thing, or what are the things that you immediately need back? Everything else was completely unnecessary and wasteful, right? So if roads went away, what was the one thing that you would immediately need back? Some sort of defined path or route to a destination. Well, we can have that without roads, right? And think about, like, in Colorado, we have to get up and drive to work during like blizzards. We've had literally maybe 2 snow days in the last 20 years, right? Where they were like, stay off the roads. And we've had worse weather conditions from a flood, and we're in a landlocked state. So go figure. But if you know, okay, so we get up, we go to work in the snow. Now we're creating a lot more potholes in the road. So now the rest of the time when it's not snowing, they're out there fixing the potholes. And then when they're done with that, it's snowing and we're going to work making potholes. And the rest of the time they're fixing potholes. And where does this end? So if it was just like essentially like a bike path, and you were riding your bike or walking to work, and you had like the luxury of time where you didn't have to get up and sprint to work and be there at an exact moment, then things would be so much more chill and relaxed all the way around. And, you know, basically, you just wouldn't even need the road.
That's what I'm saying.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Anything like that.
Fuck roads. So, all my homies hate roads. Get rid of them.
And so look at it in things that are more excessive or dangerous, like guns. No one needs that. You just don't.
Yeah, they're useless. They provide no use value. There is nothing positive that comes from guns in any capacity whatsoever. And like, and that's my thing. It's like the only reason why I am in favor of people arming themselves is because other people arm themselves that are worse than us and they want to kill us. But I would prefer to just get rid of all the fucking guns. We don't need them. The police don't need guns. The racists don't need guns. The military doesn't need guns. And if they don't have guns, then we don't need guns. And just get rid of them. Just throw them all in a fucking ocean somewhere like they fucking do in movies.
Well, I'm gonna turn my air conditioner on. If I was a gun owner and I suddenly didn't have a gun, the first thing I would need a gun for is in case somebody else had a gun. Well, if nobody had any guns, look at Max. Max, who's a good boy? Yeah, you are a good boy, Max.
Woof, woof.
Oh my god. The cutest dog. That is a cute dog, man.
He is amazing. He doesn't know what I'm doing. I'm turning my air conditioner on. He has no idea.
Oh yeah, he's like, what? What happened? Should I be concerned? Where's my owner? You mentioned that documentary Knock Down the House earlier.
Sure.
What's really weird is I was best friends with that director and producer's cousin growing up. And so I met her when she was like 9 years old.
Okay.
Isn't that weird? That's just weird.
That's weird. But that's like one of those connections that is weird. Yeah. That's super strange. I actually don't believe you. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I saw her last name and I was like, whoa. And so I called my friend. He goes, yeah, it's my cousin. So, anyway. But yeah, I forget what I was talking about.
You're talking about guns. No one needs them.
So what it comes down to is if there's something that's harmful to anybody, it gives you a sense of security, then think about, like, if you didn't have it, what would you immediately need to give you that same sense of security? A good alarm system? A vicious dog? You have... So it's like wearing a cast. Like, if you break your arm, you wear a cast. That's a good thing. But it will create its own discomfort. So if you have things in your life that provide a solution but eventually create their own discomfort, you're going to get rid of it. You're going to find another solution. So the discomfort that the majority of things make that give us security is not cool, right? Like, we need to get rid of that stuff. Everyone should be equally secure and have that same sense of security. And people go, oh, you're so naive. Like, I have a right-wing neighbor who calls me naive all the time.
Right-wing neighbor. Hell yes.
He also thinks I'm a liberal, and I'm like, look.
You wish. Whenever someone calls me a liberal, like, especially at a protest, you have people that, like, fucking roll down their windows. You fucking liberals. And I'll be like, you wish I was a liberal, motherfucker.
I want to get a t-shirt that says, I'm not a fucking liberal, you right-wing idiot. Right? Just so everyone knows where I stand on both those topics, but... Yeah, he's always calling me a liberal, or naive, but he also calls me a liberal, and neither one of those things are actually true. So that guy talks out of his ass a lot.
You should secretly record him. Do you live in a two-party consent state or a one-party consent state?
I don't know. What does that mean?
Well, it means you can secretly record someone. Like, I live in a one-party consent state, so I secretly record all my interactions with, like, police, for example. Or, like, anyone like that. You can walk into any building and, it's a wiretapping law. But I know, like, some laws you need to have the other person consent to it.
Well, that would defeat the purpose, but I don't know how... Yeah, I should figure that out. I mean...
I can just look
it up. Colorado. I
feel like
people are recording people all the time, right?
It's a one-party consent state, so you can just secretly record your neighbor and they can't do shit.
Oh. Man, maybe I will. But it's so I'm bringing this guy around though, because I think anyone who votes for a populist candidate actually probably has a lot of progressive values, and they're just misplaced intentions, right? And like he and I will talk about, and so he likes to give into the theater of politics, and the spectacle and the distractions, right? And I say, you can't listen to any of that from any side. What matters is the policy. And to have a politician tell you, I know exactly what's right for you, and then spend the rest of their time telling you what you shouldn't have is spectacle. So you really have to focus on the policy when you're talking to just like your neighbor or somebody down the street. And so when he and I just talk about the policy, we're like, yeah, that all makes total sense. Nothing that you said is crazy. But when it comes to, affiliation, things get ugly.
And that's one of the big problems. Is like, there were like these studies that were done that like you take Republicans and then ask them a bunch of questions that are like divorced from like Republican talking points or whatever, and like most, like for example, like look at marijuana legalization, like 70 or 80% in that range want to legalize it. Well, Medicare. Yeah, look at that. 70 to 80% of people aren't voting for candidates that want that. Why is that the case? oh, because of like, oh, my daddy was a Republican, so am I. Like, it's sports team bullshit. Like,
you know what? I made an analogy to a guy. I don't know if this was good, but it won him over. Every conversation I have with people who aren't into politics about politics, I swing it back to primary voting as much as possible. I always go, oh, and this is why it matters that you pay attention to the primary candidates and vote on the right candidate in the primary. And I wasn't getting through to this guy, and so I said, imagine this, you're a big sports fan. So your team let's say it's baseball. They have the worst pitcher of all time. He's losing every game. It's the end of the season. You hope that maybe we can get rid of this guy and get a better pitcher in. But instead of having like a draft or recruiting, it's left to the people, the people with sports fans to vote. And they just keep voting for the same pitcher because they recognize his name. He loses every friggin' game. They don't watch every friggin' game, but they keep voting for this guy because, oh, it's voting time. I got to do my part. Oh, yeah, there's the name I recognize. The real fans are pulling their hair out, right? Mm-hmm. So you and I are like the real fans, while the rest of these people are just voting for, a name they recognize. So, it's just the key is to pay attention. You don't have to pay. I think it's exhausting to people to think about how much attention they actually should be paying to something like politics, but just have to pay attention in the right moments. You don't have to watch all year long or be obsessed with it on Twitter like some of us are. You just have to tune in at the right times, and you have to pay attention to the right people, and then just understand that people are people. They're going to make mistakes. You can't say, oh, you screwed up, that's it, you're out. So anyway, I forget.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a pretty great analogy for people that like would follow sports but not politics. Is like, a lot of people will complain, like, oh, they're both the same. Like, it's like, okay, both. Well, how did those two people get there, right? And then they'll not know. Like when I was working with the Bernie 2020 campaign and I was canvassing, I would get people that didn't even know what a primary was. Right? Like they just had no idea. They were like, oh, I just want to beat Trump. Well, Trump's not in this election. I'll vote for whoever's not Trump. Okay, great. Good thing Trump's not on the ballot for the primary. So, you know what I mean? But it's like, and that's the other thing, is like, a lot of this stuff is concealed. Like, if you look at like popular culture, right? Like, if you look at TV shows, and I know this when it comes to police as well. TV shows, popular culture, they don't talk about primaries. Right?
Right. Oh,
You'll never see like an episode of whatever where they vote in the primary. You'll only maybe see an general election episode, and that's it. For the same reason, you don't see that many cop shows where the cops are openly corrupt and are like arresting people for pot and like beating their faces in. You'll see them where it's like they'll basically do that, but they'll do it in a way that's like, makes the cop look like the good guy. You know what I mean? And so like that's the other thing, is like there's not that much information out there in popular culture that kind of even like tells people that these things exist, and it's like that on purpose. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, like cable news covers the primaries just so you know who they don't want to win. Mm-hmm. Right. And that otherwise, if they didn't have somebody that they were, opposed to, they probably wouldn't cover it. What's funny is, like I was saying, that any violence is okay if it takes place in a comic book, 'cause that's fake. Mm-hmm. Like, I am not a fan of the police, okay? But I love police procedural TV shows and movies. Love that shit.
I feel you.
And if it's about dirty cops, I love it. Like, those are my favorite. But in real life, that shit is not cool.
And that's the thing, is like, if you want to talk about fiction, because that's what all movies are, is fiction. Right? Like, and you can, like, they could be, like, based on true events, but at the end of the day, like, the way that those characters are portrayed are fictitious, right? So it's like, you can love a movie about dirty cops. I love that shit, right? Give that to me, inject it into my veins. But at the end of the day, I know that this isn't real. I know that this is a superhero movie. This is like fucking the Hulk or something, right? These cops do not exist in real life. But a lot of people come away with that and going like, wow, I love the police. Look at what they have to go through. And it's like, bitch, you just watched The Wizard of Oz. What the fuck are you talking about? It's a fucking movie, right? But like, like they're just not in that frame of mind. right? Where they can see, like, oh, it's based on real events, but it's still fiction. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people don't understand that kind of, that break, right?
Yeah, and so when you watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you have to look at it with the same lens.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this isn't 100% fact. It's not even being told to me factually. They're not even saying it because they want me to know the facts. They're just saying it to say it.
Mm-hmm.
They want clicks. Their advertisers like it. You get money out of it. And so you just can't take anything at face value. But I feel like every time I say that, it's like, obviously, you can't take things at face value. And like,
that's one of the things, but so many people just don't know. Like, they just are not equipped. They just, like, and I think, like, I don't know. I don't know how. Like, I think the internet is doing a good job of, like, introducing people to the idea of bullshitters. Right? Because, like, you find a lot of people that are on the internet that are bullshitters, and they're very obviously bullshitters. Right? And so I think that if you have that healthy skepticism, right, and you can be too skeptical, you can say, like, you know, the same kind of perspective, it's like, all Democrats are equally evil. Like, you're skeptical of Democrats, good, but, like, you know, to say AOC is as evil as Joe Manchin is just a little ridiculous. Like, that's where you become too skeptical. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's easy enough to just look at who's voting for what at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Or who's pushing what policy and who's obviously just a stalwart. So, getting back... I don't want to keep going if you're trying to wrap it up or something.
You can... If you want to have a final topic, that's fine.
I mean, I have to watch a Majority Report at some point.
Oh, you have to watch it. Okay, so now this is you're presenting a scenario where we continue talking for like 45 more minutes, right?
Well, let me ask you a question. Like,
okay, ask me anything, any question. Let's go. I'm ready.
I always like to ask this kind of stuff because then maybe I can help out depending on what the answer is. So I know that you're into games, right?
I'm a gamer.
You said that you've read comics. What is there like a particular genre of comic or?
I'm not much of a comic person. I've read Naruto. You know, like I'm basic bitch.
See, I find it interesting when people like the comics I make and they're not actually already a fan of comics.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of pictures and comics. I just haven't, I've never really delved into it.
That just means that comics work.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's one of the best ways to convey ideas. But anyway, there's something for everybody out there. If you had a local comic shop, or if anyone has a local comic shop, you can go to local comic shop finder or something like that online. You can just go in there, and if they know what they're doing, you could say, here's what I'm into. Do you have anything like this? And they definitely will. So there's something for everybody out there. It's a great form of escapism. It really is.
I should maybe get into that.
Yeah. But anyway, I like to promote that as much as possible.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get you. You have a vested interest, You're trying to promote the good word of the career that you happen to be establishing for yourself. Me, I would just say, hey, there's a podcast for everybody, including, but not limited to, but also very limited to mine. I've got a good podcast.
Yeah, and your podcast has Max the dog, and other podcasts, frankly, do not.
Exactly.
So,
like, let's get Max. Yeah. Maxie! He's not responding. All right, we'll try that again later. Max! Yeah. He's dead, I think. No, I'm just kidding. He's asleep.
Oh! My dog's waiting for a squirrel to knock on the door. There
Maxie,
he is.
Look at this dog. Okay, check this out. Max! Look at him. He's so old. Look at how he gets up. He's so old.
How old is he?
He's like 8. But he's also been abused. So he ages at an accelerated rate. Look at this goddamn dog. Are you seeing this?
I have a thing now whenever I adopt a dog, I'm going to look at senior dogs. Because the worst thing is when people give away a dog because it's old.
Right.
I hate that.
I don't want to deal with the dog pooping on the floor because they're old. It's like, okay.
I
don't want to deal with you pooping on the floor, bitch.
Right, yeah.
Look at this animal.
I had a 15-year-old dog.
Oh my god.
We adopted a tripod. She's missing her front leg. People are like, how'd she miss her leg? And we're like, we adopted her that way. And they're like, you did? I was like, yeah, she needed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't adopt a dog just, for novelty's sake. That's a good dog. Oh my goodness.
Look at him. I'm gonna cry. Sometimes I just look at this dog, right, and I just start crying because I'm like, oh my god, like, look at this. Like, what is he doing?
Right now, I think he's sharing scent.
Damn right he is. I can smell this motherfucker from a mile away.
Yeah, that's good.
That's what I'm saying. Like, think about this. Like, podcasts with, like, animals in the background. Very few and far between. And that's one of the things that I like to do is I don't want to have, like, a studio. Like, this is my bedroom. I got clothes all over the fucking floor. I got a mountain of fucking blankets and pants and shirts coming out. Like, literally, you see that fucking shit? What is that? That's a dresser. The drawer is not only pulled out and open, but it's, like, falling out. Like, look at, like, I'm going to tilt the camera. Like, look at that. It's falling out. It's not even all the way in. There's clothes falling out of it. What is going on back there? I've got an empty box from a package that I opened that's still on the floor. This is my set. I live like a slob. I live in destitution and in disarray. And I got this dog who just roams in the background. He's there. He exists.
See, everybody does. You're just being honest. I think there's so many backdrops out there in studios that just look phony. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. You want to have less distraction going on in the background. Maybe that makes sense. But otherwise, if your message is clear and strong, that's what people are going to focus on anyway.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars for a set. I'm just going to spend $20 for like a poster of my favorite video game, right? There you go.
Which one is that?
Mega Man X6. Right there.
I played the original Mega Man when it first came out.
I bet you did.
Was that the 80s or 90s?
Yes. 80s. I think it was like 85 or some shit.
Yeah. 16-bit?
Maybe, I don't know. It's 8-bit, buddy. Gotta go back a little bit.
Jeez. Yeah, it was fun though. I think we beat it, my friends and I.
Well, I would like to see you play more Mega Man, because it's a good-ass game.
Yeah. I'd have to get a console, I guess, right?
You don't. They're on Steam. You have Steam? You have a computer?
I just have to figure out what Steam is.
Okay, so I can help with that. That's easy.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I personally, like, my, like, whole podcast shindig is about me just blogging. Like, that is the first and foremost, like, if you look at the list of mission statements for this podcast, it's goal number 1, blog. Everything else is tertiary. Right, whereas a lot of other people, like, their goals are to, like, spread a specific message. Like, for me, that's, like, secondary, right? My first and foremost is I like the idea of doing a show 7 days a week, because it's like, I can look back at, the show from, let's say, December 17th. Maybe I didn't do a show because I had a YouTube strike in that month. But, I like the idea. It's like, you never know when you can, like, look back at certain points in your life, and it's just cool to have, like, an hour to 2 hour long video every single day of my life. That's just cool. And I'm not necessarily blogging about my life, I'm talking about news and current events, but it's like, you can look at the state of my room, you can see where things are. I can go like, oh, remember when that was on the wall and that there, and that's just interesting to me, right? And well,
you interact with your community. So remember I was defining what a letterhack is and writing in the letter columns. The letter column in the back of the comic book, until the internet and message boards took over, was the community. And so this is just like an extension of the printed page, and now it's all online, it's virtual, but it's the same thing. It's the community.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, think about this, right? There are episodes of Above It All that exist, and Max isn't there. Right? Like, can you imagine a world?
Why bother?
Right? Like, what on fucking planet Earth? Like, I think it was when I got a YouTube strike. Like, pre-YouTube strike, there was no Max. And then when the YouTube strike was over, all of a sudden, there's a goddamn dog.
Yeah.
And, well, when we first got this dog wasn't even supposed to be mine. It was just, like, the dog, he liked me. Right? So it's like, now, look at this goddamn dog. If you go back to December, they'd be like, oh, yeah, we got a new dog in the background. And they just, like, walk around in and out. And it's like, okay, that's just a dog.
That dog adopted you.
Yes, literally.
That's the best way.
Oh, yeah?
The feral border collie come into my life that way.
Really? Just like wandered in through the front door? It's like, hey, what's up?
Well, somebody had a rescue, and they said, yeah, we got this border collie now that was living out on the edge of a farm for the first 3 or 4 years of her life. And she's real skittish and doesn't really like anyone. And she like literally jumped into my lap.
Oh my God.
And I had her for 10 or 11 years after that.
That's amazing.
Pretty big deal. Yeah.
I like dogs. I don't know if I'd ever get a second one. I think that's too much. But also, like, it could be like, you know, I've been thinking about like the idea that like, you know, I am going to protests and stuff a lot lately. So it's like if I did get another dog, that could be Max's friend. You know?
How many days in a row have you been out there?
Today will be day 48. It's crazy. Can you imagine? No breaks. I've been there every single day. And that's the other thing. It's like, you know, it's interesting. Like, again, the daily blog, right? Like, not many YouTubers do daily shows, right? I do daily shows because, again, you never know what kind of events are occurring, right? So it's like, I've been trying to cover these protests every single day so that, let's say, right, like the police want to say, like, oh, we had reports of y'all were doing this at a protest on X day. I'll be like, actually, good sir, no, that is not true. Here's the evidence, right? And so, like, that's why, and then also, like, I love documenting the protest because you can see the evolution, the growth, and the changes in, like, real time. And then you can go back, and, like, recently I was looking at some, like, you know, the day 3, or, like, especially the nights with the riot cops, where I have that image of me screaming like a motherfucker at the riot cops. I think I was wearing this shirt, actually. Right, that's super interesting to go look at now that we're on, like, day 48, and there's no more riot cops, right? And, like, now, like, you know, it's super interesting to say, like, oh, wow, like, you know, they had a point where they bust in fucking riot cops, and they were, like, threatening to kill us, right? That's crazy, right? And then you never know if that's going to happen again. And let's say, you know, they do reinstitute a curfew, which they totally might, and they do reinstitute riot police, which they totally might. Then I've got all that footage. I can go back, I can look, and I can learn more, and I can say, all right, these are maybe things I missed while I was in the moment that I got on camera. These are, like, maybe certain strategies that they perform, right? And that kind of stuff. And that's, again, like, you know, the daily blog posting combined with the protesting, I think is like the exact perfect combination for this show. That, you know, a lot of people don't like the fact that I like do that every single day, and they think that it detracts from other things, which I understand. But you know, if you want to go see what Joe Biden's doing or Joe Manchin's doing, you can go watch any other show that exists, and like go watch the Majority Report. Like, that's your shit. Like, there you go. But if you want to see what's going on in a protest that literally 0 other people in the world are covering in the angle that I am, I got an exclusive, and I, you know, as long as it lasts.
That's a unique opportunity. You have to capitalize on that. I don't think that like has anybody else protesting in your city been out there that many consecutive days, or every day?
There's a couple people that have been out there every day. I think I'm the one who's been out there the most. I think I've got the record, because one of my friends missed a day, like in the first week or whatever. They had like a foot blister, and so they couldn't march, and I'm holding that against them. So I've been out there every single day. I'm pretty sure I've been the only one.
But I think if those other people who have been out there for as many days or almost as many days had an established audience and a YouTube channel, and they were reporting every day, they would be doing the same thing you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It just so happens that I'm the only person in Elizabeth City that has that, you know, that thing going on. And that's like, yeah, and that's the thing, is like, again, like my footage and like things that I've used, I had, you know, contact with news organizations, and there's certain things that, like, you know, the news will try to always water your message down. But, like, you know, I've got some pretty decent info into the news, right? Like, you know, and it's like, you know, I always, you know, try to say, like, what would this be like without me? Well, would this still be a protest every day? Probably. It's just that no one would know what's going on. You know what I mean?
I hate to think of that. I hate to like, I know there are people out there doing activism and no one's reporting or recording or broadcasting it, but I hate to think about it. I'd much rather there always be somebody out there making making it available to all the rest of us.
Yeah, and that's why, like, you know, like, there's been a lot of days, like, especially after I got the vaccine, right? Like, where it's like, do I really want to go out? My fucking arm hurts. And the day after the vaccine, where I was considering, like, maybe, like, this is the day, if I were to take a day off, this is the day. That day is when a car drove into protesters, and I got a video of that happening that no one else got. Right? So it's like, I can't take a break because you never know what's going to happen. And if something like that happened and I wasn't there, and let's say, like, like half of the shit that was documented on that day wasn't documented because I wasn't there, I would feel like shit. Right? I would feel like I failed. I would feel like a failure. And so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of days where it's like, I'm doing the recap and I realize that this is the same shit as the day before, but it's like, okay, that's good. Right? And it's like, also, like, I realize that this isn't content that people, people that don't live here aren't necessarily interested. Okay, so there's a day where people marched up and down the same street and said the same things. All right, great. I don't care. And if you don't care, that's great. That's fine. But I feel like this is content that needs to be there, whether you care or not. Because again, let's say we're in a situation, day 78, right? And, someone burns down a building. All right. Well, you can go look. All right, we did 77 days of nonviolent protesters, and protests, and nothing worked, right? Like, you can, like, say, like, this has been documented from the day one, from me, and then other news agencies, right? And so, like, my thing is, like, just for the sake of, like, future me, I want to do, like, a documentary on this whole, whenever this ends, if it ever ends, right? And if it doesn't end, there's got to be a point where I realize, okay, maybe I'll do a documentary on, like, the first 30 days or so, like that kind of a thing. And then, like, but there's going to be a point where it's like, like, all the footage that I'm recording now, I can use in the future, right? And so, like, I'm recording a lot of stuff that I don't even intend on uploading. That's not even stuff for my YouTube channel, but it's just stuff that, like, maybe even I'll be, like, 80 years old and I want to reminisce, and I'll watch, like, some video that I recorded of me at the protest when I was 24. You know what I mean? So, like, that's kind of like, that's the angle that I'm going on here.
Hey, speaking of your chat, is there anybody saying anything right now?
Yeah, there's a couple people. Yeah, there's we got Jeffrey, 34, has no family. It's a very unfortunate case.
Talk smack or anything?
Yeah, someone said that you suck. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Does anyone have any chat questions? I guess we'll try to end it before the majority report, so you can go watch your regularly scheduled program. Does anyone have questions for the Letterhack? Not a Letterhack. Again, this is the Letterhack, the one and only. So if anyone has questions, let me know. I thought someone burnt a door. No. Someone's like, okay, there's, like, the one instance of arson, quote unquote, that's happened in Elizabeth City was a snow cone shop was, like, had, like, a fired up side panel or something, and we all are pretty sure, because the snow cone owner hates black people and they're, like, also a known pedophile in the community, we are 99.9% sure that they did it themselves for a headline, and, like, and no one took it seriously. The cops aren't even really investigating, so we're 99% sure he did it himself. But that is the only instance of arson. Call him Letter Snack. All right, hello, Letter Snack. There you go.
That's funny, because my nickname is Matt Strackbein. Because I snack all day.
Oh, okay. Well, I think Shuriyev's intention is to call you a snack, I think is the intention.
Oh, okay.
Well, there you go. I don't know, but is Letterhack a fan of cookery?
Cookery? Like cooking?
Sure.
I was a professional cook at one point in my life. And
you are no longer professional. You've gotten worse over time.
I just changed professions, but I ran a couple of pizza places right after high school with my brother, who was the second fastest pizza maker in the world for 2 years straight. And then I was working in taverns and running kitchens as a sous chef and a saute cook. But now I take direction from my wife, Carrie. She's a vegan, and she cooks vegan food that you wouldn't have any idea it was vegan. There's no reason to present a dish and say, this is vegan. It's just, eat this, it's good food.
I agree with that entirely. We got more questions here. I want to see your 3-legged adorable dog. Would you post pictures on Twitter at some point?
Sure. Yeah,
all right,
sure.
There you go. What is Matt's favorite comic book or series?
Oh, I'm a huge fan of Hellboy.
Okay. I've got a PS1 Hellboy game, so I know what that is, actually.
There you go, right on. I was such a big fan and such a rabid Letterhack for their letter column that they eventually hired me to make backup stories, 2-page comics for their comic books to explain the history of certain characters.
That's crazy. So if I played the Hellboy PS1 game released in the late 90s, would you have any influence on it?
No.
Okay.
I came around after that.
Okay. Well, you should have said yes. Matt seems like a genuine guy. Where can I find your work if you don't have Twitter? Do you have any website of any kind?
Yeah, you can go to mattstrackbein.weebly.com. I try to update that as frequently as possible. I've been a little busy lately with the Kickstarter, but
I can put that in the description. So after this is over, send me all the links and I'll put them in the description for the individual video segment of this.
And I'm on Instagram under Friends of Strackbein.
Okay. Not bad. What do you really think of Andrea?
One thing I always consider with people that I draw a lot is because I started out doing this for my friends, like my personal friends growing up. You could make cartoons about them in real time, and we'd all have a good time making fun of people and whatever, but it was all in fun. So I always think, would these people be a friend of mine in real life? Like, if we lived in the same town. And so what was the actual wording of the question? What do I really think of Andrea?
What do you really think of me?
I really think that Andrea and I would be good friends in real life.
Amazing. That's incredible.
Even despite the age difference.
Well, I mean, I've got lots of older friends. It's okay. I'm the youngest person in the chat room, so it's all good. Do you speak French?
No, which I think is a French word, but...
Well, you speak some French then, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Do you think you would sell T-shirts for the comic strip?
I would like to, but that gets expensive.
Right, you're going to need to have people interested to make it worthwhile?
Yeah, basically, because I was a production manager and a color separator for screen printing for a long time. For T-shirts, that was another job I did for several years. And you really have to, you don't make any money until the second print run. And so the first print run is recouping cost, and some of the expenses aren't there the second time. You only pay for them once. But that gets really expensive. But stay tuned, because there is an angle coming up for the Kickstarter. We're going to announce in the 24 hours leading up to the actual launch.
We can always have you back on at that point if you want.
Yeah, but on that same topic. But that's all I'll say about that.
All right, when are you coming on Good Morning Comrade?
Oh, where's the invite? Let's go.
I guess that's the invite. Send a DM on Twitter, Jeff. All right, I'm still scrolling. Artistic influences. Any Latin American ones? ?
Huh. Yeah, I wonder if I do, actually, and just don't realize it. My main artistic influence is David Lapham. He does a comic called Stray Bullets. He will draw people. He draws fictional characters, but no character has the same ears, the same nose. He doesn't just draw things one way and try and make it look different by putting glasses on them or changing the hairstyle. He truly differentiates between every character, and that's something I aspire to do. And Mike Mignola of Hellboy is my other inspiration, because he's a minimalist. He gets the most out of the fewest lines. So, but yeah, let me think about that, because I'm sure there are people from Latin America that I appreciate, and I just can't think of it at the moment, because I always think about them in terms of their work.
Right.
You know, like I don't look at actors, I look at characters. So, kind of the same thing.
Okay. What about Howard the Duck? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, what about it?
What, I don't know. Viola just says, what about Howard the Duck?
So Howard the Duck is an old school comic book character, and George Lucas made a movie about him in the 80s, which I thought was okay for novelty's sake, but then it was on TV every day, all day. And they flooded the market. Okay. Now it's come back as another kind of a novelty in Marvel Comics, and I just don't read it enough to have an opinion. But I think any character based on a duck is going to do well, right?
I like ducks, yeah.
Donald Duck.
Do you have an opinion on Judge Dredd?
Yeah, I love Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is originally from a comic anthology in Britain called 2000 AD, and it is sensational. They've had some of the best artist work on it. There you go again. It's about a cop in the future who's putting a lockdown on everything that's not the law, which is terrible in real life, but in a comic, it's awesome.
How do you feel about the Guillermo Hellboy movies?
So anytime you talk about a comic book movie, I always refer people back to the comic book, the original source material. I think those movies took liberties that didn't need to be taken. I think he made it his own to a degree, which the original creator, Mike Mignola, was fine with. But as a fan, I watched the first movie and was like, yeah, I'll stick to the comics.
I get you. How many jobs did you have so far?
In my life?
Sure.
I had a newspaper route so my family could have the newspaper when I was a kid. I worked in the church rectory answering phone for priests because I was raised Catholic, and that was kind of like a way to make money and not have to do other church-related things. Let's see. Grocery store clerk. Landscape. Does vocalist in a punk band count?
Yes.
I made money at it. Yeah, I don't know, maybe 20 different jobs in my life.
That's awesome. That's what I aspire to be. Either 0 or like 39 trillion. That's like my
I would
goal.
have like 3 at a time.
Okay.
Like in my 20s, when I would go out drinking all night and go to bed at like 4 or 5 a.m., I was up at like 7 as a barista. And then at night, I would work in a tavern next door as a cook. And on my days off, I was a landscaper at historic buildings.
Okay.
In my hometown, Annapolis, Maryland.
Hustler culture. There you go.
Yeah, I'm always going.
Isn't that uniquely American? God damn.
Yeah, right.
All right. Do you like Mobius?
Yeah, he's one of the greatest French artists. French, right? I believe?
Maybe.
Yeah, he's great.
Where can you find the drawing of Andrea on Max? I'll link that in the description. I'll find that. And just watch the video version and scroll down. I'll link it there. Let's see. That might be it. Let me see. How much would a commission be?
Commissions vary depending on if you want black and white, color, what size, digital, or traditionally drawn. One thing I'm doing for the Kickstarter, and I'm glad this came up because I need to say this. I have been telling people I get requests for commissions almost every day, and I have to turn them down because I'm so preoccupied with the comic book. So, Kickstarter will let you choose a reward level and then do an add-on. And one of the add-ons is a digital full-color portrait. And I've advertised, it's like I do about left-wing people all the time. But I've advertised this with examples on Twitter and Instagram. So you can have one custom, whoever you want, yourself, whatever, as an add-on. So it's going to be very affordable and available. But yeah, I can't do them now, so I don't really talk about the price. But sometimes people say I want a commission. I go, all right, well, what do you want it? And I'm like, okay, hold on. That's like a month-long project. It's going to be a few $100. Or they just want a picture of themselves, and I can do it super affordably.
All right. So stay tuned, TM.
Yeah, stay tuned.
All right. What was the worst job you've ever had? This will be the last question.
The worst job I ever had was being a professional mover. I quit after 2 days because the guy running it was just not cool. So maybe that would have been like a fine profession, but the actual job for the actual company was the pits. So I got out of there.
All right. And there you go, folks. Do you have anything you want to say before I ban you from the stream?
Thank you for having me on, at least this one time. I really appreciate it, and it's just like a flat-out honor to be on here. I love your show.
That's amazing.
And I love your community.
I'm gonna cry. So before I cry, I'm going to end the stream. So thank you, Matt, also known as again, not the, or nor B for that matter, Letterhack, of the Letterhack Industries. And I will just send me all the links in the Discord DMs, and then I will post them in the video description. And so if you're watching the video version, scroll down. If you're watching the live stream version, go fuck yourself. Thank you for watching. Y'all have a great one. That's it. It's over. It's done. That's it. It's gone. I'm turning it off. So that's it. All right. You have a good one. All right.
8 months after his alleged meeting with the Burmese executives. So this Burmese, they say, pronounce it Burmese. A real beautiful company. 8 months. $7 million for reef fish management. $25 million to combat Asian carp. $2.5 million to count the number of amberjack fish in the Gulf of Mexico.
Everybody comes in your grandmother, your father. Everybody comes in your grandmother. Everybody comes in your grandmother, your...
We've ended the war on American energy. We were in war. And we've ended the war on beautiful, clean coal, one of our great natural resources.
Honestly, Sam, if I could just get this sentence out. We could talk about Jimmy Dore can go and kill 15 kids tomorrow, and I still believe in force the vote.
He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. Really? And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about Hunter?
hell.
Are you talking about
I'm talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about me.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't
for cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president.
Everybody digging my chili when I'm laying down? That is not true.
They weren't coming because they couldn't get in. Once they think they can get in, they're coming, and they are coming at levels that you haven't even seen yet.
That was an opinion of somebody.
I'm about to be 34 and I have no family.
Unbelievable.